All right. Well, this is the Bills um, video that I never ever thought I would be making, or at least not this early. I am a Bills fan going back to the 80s. Um, I went through all the pain. I was 20 years old when the Bills first went to the Super Bowl, 1990. 21 years old in 1990. So from the time I was 21, could go to a bar, could have a beer legally. I've been I was a Bills fan for the 4 years before that. Back to Joe Ferguson, Joe Cribbs. Those are names probably very few Bills fans will know those names. And then, obviously when Jim Kelly came in, it was amazing. I suffered and bet on those Super Bowl games, bet more and more every year, and obviously was distraught like many other fans. But I just want to tell you, how far it goes back. So if you see this, you're probably going to, you'll know how far it goes back if I've got something like this. I don't know, they may still sell them, but this is a, this is my banner, given to me by a dear friend back in the day. Now, why does all this matter? Everything I've just said you could probably find, a million people in the Northeast or in Buffalo that could have made that exact video. But why it's unique is because I don't live in Buffalo. I live in Sacramento, California, and I have been a diehard Bills fan since 1980, really since 1982, 82. I started collecting football pencils when I was in 6th grade, and the Buffalo Bills football pencil was my favorite pencil. It's the one I had the most of in my collection. The way it used to work is you would go, in the multi-purpose room where you had lunch in my 6th grade school called Roberts Elementary. You would go and there's a pencil machine, and for 10 cents you could buy a pencil. Well, it used to be just plain old, yellow pencils. Then all of a sudden they loaded these football pencils in the machine, and then everyone in school started collecting them. Well, I had the most pencils of anyone in the school, or me and another guy. We were like neck and neck, and that's how I ended up having the most, or 5 or 6 Bills pencils in my collection. I had 2s and 3s of others, but some were rarer than others. But what makes this whole thing unique is that I was a diehard and continue to be a diehard Bills fan, and was a diehard Bills fan through the 49ers Super Bowl years, when they were winning every Super Bowl and going to every championship, and everyone here in Northern California was insane 49ers fan and supporter. I was not. I was a Bills fan, and actively expressed my disdain for the 49ers, call them the 40-winers, because when things don't go their way, their fans are they're the opposite of Bills fans. They're fair weather as you can possibly get. When the 49ers aren't winning, you cannot find a 49er jacket, shirt, anything here. And so that really, it was the primary reason. Was one, I started following the Bills as soon as I started following football. But 2 was because I couldn't stand how the 49er fans were fair weather. For me, if your team's losing, That's just a part of the process. That's a part of the pain. That's a part of everything you go through. And then that makes the winning even more sweet. And I don't think Niners fans can ever experience that because they're fair weather. So even when they're losing, if you didn't actively support them, if you all of a sudden jump to another team, which a lot of fair weather fans did around here, there's quite a few Bills fans around here now just because they're 49ers fans are fair weather fans. So anyway, that's why it pains me. So that's the background. But why it pains me so much to make this video is because this is what I didn't ever want to say. But it dawned on me while I was watching a breakdown of the demise of Russell Wilson, that what's happening to Russell Wilson and what happened to him over the years when he lost a step. He had a very similar playing style to Josh Allen, where he depended on scrambling, evading the pass rush, and then making a play. Well, when you lose a step, just a fraction of a second, you lose a step, you get uncomfortable in the pocket because you don't think you can escape. And that's what's happened to Russell Wilson. And I hate to say it, God, I hate to say this, but the problems that the Bills are now having are not related to the wide receivers. And they're not related to anything other than the fact that Josh Allen has lost a microsecond of speed, of processing, a physical ability to move. And what that's done is psychologically, it's hurt his confidence that he can stand in there and then, when needed, escape. I see it in his throwing motion. I see it in the velocity on the ball. It just doesn't look the same as last year. It looks like he's lost a step. Now, I can go ahead and, I'm going to say what's on a lot of people's minds. Sometimes you get married, you're happy, you're content, and you're like, hey, I'm just going to go to work and, come home and enjoy my life. And football's not his life anymore. His life is his wife. Maybe he's thinking about having kids, things of that nature. So I don't begrudge him that. What I'm saying is that these are reasons that affect, maybe he doesn't want to get hit. He now is thinking about, 30 years down the road and is playing with his kids, and he doesn't want to stand in there and get hammered just to complete a pass. So I'm going to say it. I know I'll probably get a ton of hate for it, but this is a Josh Allen problem, and I don't know if it's his conditioning, if it's his personal life in the off season, that he got married and he's happy, and or something else. Everybody's that's ever had a marriage go south knows that there's a potential for that to happen, and so I'm not saying that that's it, but there's definitely something has changed. It's definitely about Josh Allen. And just like with Russell Wilson, there was flashes where he could still turn it on, and there was flashes of greatness there, and it was his old self. But he's approaching 30 years old, and that's about the time that you start to slow down a little bit. And if you don't do something extraordinary to stay in shape, and quite frankly, it looks like he spent the off season doing commercials. So if he's not going to take the steps to stay in peak physical condition, he's going to lose that microsecond. And with the loss of that microsecond, he loses his confidence that he can evade the rush. He loses some velocity on the ball, giving the defenders an extra split second to step in there and throwing the timing of the plays off. I had bet everything, I had hoped everything on this year, because living in Sacramento, the Super Bowl is now in the Bay Area this year. And I thought this is the year that I will be able to go and see the Bills play in the Super Bowl, and I'll be able to drive there from Sacramento. Levi Stadium is about 2.5 hours from here. So I really thought this was going to be it. But unless they can modify the system around his loss of and accommodate his loss of a microsecond. Um, and that's the failure of Joe Brady in my estimation, is that he has failed to recognize that this loss has taken place. This timing, this ability loss has taken place, and he is not making adjustments in the passing game to accommodate. Some of those are comeback routes, out routes, curl routes where you can come back, or the receiver comes back to the ball. He's not doing any of that. He's depending on his receivers to fight for the ball, and that's where the receivers they don't have great hands. So, with the exception of Shakir, Coleman does not have great hands. He's physical, but he's not going to save the day, and neither is a number one receiver. So if that's your hope, that we just magically bring in a number one receiver, you started to see at the end of last year. Amari Cooper came in, had some minimal impact, but he's a number one receiver. He's been, and guess what? He didn't have because Josh Allen at that point was slowing down. You were starting to see the effects of it late last year, and those dramatically carried into the season this year, because he didn't do what he needed to do in the offseason to maintain that. So at 29, staring down 30, at this point, this is the view from the left coast, that unless an offensive coordinator is brought in that understands that he's losing speed in his ability to escape and his ability to throw, and build a game plan around that, then we're in for some very hard years. If they just stubbornly keep saying it's not Josh, it's not Josh. And don't get me wrong, I love Josh Allen. So, over and out from the left coast Bills Mafia, or West Coast Bills Mafia here, late.